Hey, you're listening to the Smoke Meat Podcast. I'm your host, Brad Pittman. Smoke Meat's brought to you today by Joe's Underground at the corner of 8th and Broad in Augusta, Georgia, in the bottom of the Lamar Building. Such a great place to go. You meet new friends, you hang out with your old ones, you have a snack, you have a drink, you just have a good time in general. I've been known to have some live entertainment in there, especially one of your favorite comedians. That would be me. I consider it my home club because they make me feel like I'm at home every time I'm there. And they'll do the same for you. That's Joe's Underground at the corner of 8th and Broad in Augusta, Georgia, in the bottom of the Lamar Building. Remember, I goes to Joe's and so should you. Today, my guest is Charlie Hoxie. Charlie is such a great guy. I had such a ball with him. He produced a film called The Grand Unified Theory of Howard Bloom. If you haven't seen this movie yet, you need to see it today. It's available on Amazon. Oh man, it's just, I can't even describe it. It's so wonderful. And we had a great time talking about it, and you're going to get to have a great time listening to it. So go on ahead and kick off here on Smoked Meat. Hey, how you doing today, Charlie?
Hey, I'm fine.
Outs-
Good to talk to you.
Outstanding, man, outstanding. Uh, been looking forward to this. Done some homework, done a little bit of reading, and I know you've got a new movie out. Well, it's especially new on digital right now. The Grand Unified Theory of Howard Bloom.
Yeah. It's been about three. Well, we started fall of 2016, so just over 3 years in the making. So it's been a long journey, and now it's out there for the world to see.
Yeah, and Howard, man, I've had him on my show, and that is the most interesting cat that I have met in a long time. If you
Yeah,
can't get Howard to say something, you have done something because that man is amazing.
yeah, yeah. No, they definitely broke the mold with Howard Bloom for sure.
Yeah, definitely. How do you get involved with Howard? How do you get involved with this project?
So Howard, as you learn a little bit about in the film, one of his kind of the life's work is a book that he may or may not ever get around to finishing, but it's called The Grand Unified Theory of Everything in the Universe, including the human soul. And the try to make a long story short, he this book, as you see in the film, at present exists as like a 700-page table of contents, which is as bizarre as it sounds. I mean, it's basically just an endless list of chapter ideas that he would like to flesh out sometime and just show, connect all of the branches of different sciences that he's ever studied and unify them all together in this work. And where I came into the picture is that he also had a TV version that he still wants to make, that his proposal would be a 77-part series, so a 77-hour series. And anyways, I work at this media company in Brooklyn, and the pitch for the TV version found its way to my boss's desk.
Mm-hmm.
And so then, yeah, that's kind of what roped our organization into it, and eventually kind of found its way to me. Um, but yeah, that was kind of the initial genesis.
Yeah, and it's funny. Howard is such an interesting guy. I mean, when you say he's got all these theories, he does, and I mean
Yeah,
every one of them makes sense. That's the weird part.
yeah,
And you think of a guy like this, you don't think of him as being the guy that got sticks to be mainstream. You don't think of him as
right,
being the publicist for freaking Michael Jackson and everybody. It's like,
right.
okay, one or the other, but he is so rounded. I mean, I can't even describe him.
Yeah. I mean, and like as you say, it's like how is it that one person does all of this? Writes books on evolutionary biology and um, but also, was like a legendary publicist who worked with Prince and Michael Jackson and Bob Marley, and um, he is just a genius, and he's applied his genius to many different fields.
Yeah, and the one thing a lot of people don't know about him, the chronic fatigue syndrome, that's a real thing, and it's debilitating. Yet he just pushes on.
Yeah, yeah, no, that was so. I first got the chance to meet Howard. Um, he this pitch that I mentioned that like made its way to my boss like around summertime 2016, and we did a little filming, or my organization did some filming with him. I wasn't involved with the project at that point, um, where they just kind of invited him in and interviewed him in our studio and let him riff about some of his ideas. And then it was that fall, 2016. Um, I just, I became very interested in Howard's big picture type thinking, and really, um, another way of telling about it is I was a geology major in college,
Mm-hmm.
so kind of this big picture thinking, like large view science of really, learning about how our lives and just the existence of the human species and life in general on Earth, kind of how all these things fit into the bigger picture of existence and as we know it, and the cosmos and the universe and all of that. Um, and so, anyways, that all greatly piqued my interest. And then just a little bit that I knew about Howard the man and how he lived his life. But yeah, when we met, finally met in November 2016, and yeah, learned about the chronic fatigue and being bedridden for over 15 years, not leaving his apartment, and basically had to leave his PR career, which he had kind of built himself up to be quite a legend in the field, and turned away from all of that. But in the process, eventually found his way to his original love of science and writing, and had this rebirth as a science author. Um, so, what struck me from the beginning was how he viewed that as a blessing. His chronic fatigue syndrome, because without that, he never would have been able to kind of return to his true passion, his true calling of wanting to write these books that had been in his head, trying to get out for since he was quite young.
Yeah.
So from that first meeting, there was one phrase that he said which really stuck in my mind, and for a little while I thought about trying to call the film this, but surf the catastrophe. That's kind of like how you can sum up Howard's philosophy.
Yeah. You know what? If I had to visualize the book when it's finally finished, if it ever is, because if I know Howard, I mean, there's no end, none at all.
Yeah.
You've seen the artists that'll get on stage and they'll have music going, and they've got a canvas, and it looks like they're just splattering paint everywhere, and then all of a sudden it's over, and they flip the picture upside down, and it's just beautiful portrait. I feel like that's how this book's going to be.
Yeah, that's funny because that reminds me of something that Howard once said to me in an interview that didn't make it into the film, but he likened all of his books and his kind of collected bibliography and life's work as tiles of a mosaic.
Yeah.
So looking at the individual tile, it doesn't look like much. And he's also described this grand unified theory of everything as the skeleton key to understanding all of his books. But yeah, I mean, I think it also makes me think of another line which actually is in the film, where he talks about how for him the end game is infinite.
Mm.
You know, so for him it's not so much finishing this thing. It's just he's so passionate about exploring these ideas and theories and trying to get them down that it's enough to kind of just occupy him forever. And he, if he had 5 more lifetimes, I don't know that he would actually finish this thing.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that's what makes him so great. Is he's basically when you talk about the mosaic, I think if the mosaic ever comes to pass, it's going to be a picture of that fro that he had. That's my thing,
Mm-hmm.
because that was phenomenal. But, it's neat that he's able to get these ideas out finally and do that. But it must also be torture to know that there are so many in there and he can't get them all out right now.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I mean, he's doing his best. I mean, he basically wrote and published. Well, when I first started filming with him, he was in the process of getting like 2 books published. One that I think he'd written long time ago, but had revised slightly, the Muhammad Code,
mm-hmm.
and then another book which I think he had started, but then had recently finished, How I Accidentally Started the '60s.
Yeah.
And then we filmed, and towards the end of the filming, he wrote his latest book, Einstein, Michael Jackson, and Me. Over the course of just a few months, he just really cranked it out.
Yeah.
And now that's out as well. So he's racing against time for sure, but he's doing his best.
Yeah, and for anybody that doesn't understand as quickly as he writes, especially as deep as he writes,
yeah,
that's a gift. I mean, I started writing a book about 25 years ago,
mm-hmm.
and it's little short stories, kind of like you remember a writer who wrote for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution named Louis Grizzard.
Mm.
He just did little short things, about a little slice of life back in the past, growing up in the South.
Mm-hmm.
Well, mine is kind of the same thing. It's called Put Your Teeth in, Daddy, the Preacher's Coming. And the original chapters are actually on a 3.5-inch floppy. That's how long I've been doing this thing.
Uh-huh.
And I have no discipline, as you can tell, none at all. And if Howard got the idea to do this book, he could probably do it while he was eating a roast beef sandwich, and have
pretty much,
three volumes of it. And that's
well,
just
yeah.
a gift.
I mean, his kind of work ethic is very inspirational, and I think you're not alone. And I think all of us have little projects that we kind of chink away on when we have time, but we also have families and jobs and kind of other pursuits that keep us from that. Whereas Howard has just really, formulated this life for himself. And this was, again, part of what CFS kind of forced him to do. He worked out this very precise routine to maximize, the usage of what little energy he had every day. And, he eventually had got more and more energy and was actually able to pretty much fully overcome the CFS. But he still has that just pretty nuts routine, and just every minute of the day is planned out. And because he, gets so much joy out of his work, he's pretty much maximizes his day for, just long, uninterrupted hours to devote to, whatever project he happens to have going on at that time.
Yeah. Yeah. And, just even watching the trailer of the movie, I mean, the people who, talk about this cat, Joan Jett, for God's sake.
Yeah.
I mean, who does Joan Jett talk about? She is rock royalty.
Yeah.
And, it's just, damn.
Yeah. Yeah, that was exciting to get her. I mean, I'm kind of, this is my first feature-length documentary, and so I'm kind of no one. It's a challenge just to get any of the rock stars that he worked with to just return my emails. At one point, we kind of had some inroads with John Mellencamp as well.
Mm-hmm.
They ultimately said that he, couldn't fit an interview into his schedule, which was unfortunate. But yeah, Joan Jett, Joan and Kenny Laguna, who is her longtime manager, producer, partner. The two of them both have, deep love for Howard. And as they say in the film, when Joan was in the Runaways,
Mm-hmm.
which was LA based, and then she left the band and moved to New York, relocated to New York. So in a way, she was kind of starting from scratch. But Howard, I think part of Howard's talent was just being able to identify really just true talent in the sense of talent that sprang up from, an intense soul.
Mm-hmm.
Howard was he called himself kind of a shaman for divining the souls of these rock stars that he worked with. So he saw that in Joan. He saw this authenticity and just this unique energy. And he took her on as a client for free for the first year that he worked for her. He deferred all the payments for the first year. So, that obviously stuck with them, and he did great work for Joan and Kenny. And so, luckily they were still remembered all of that, 30 years later, and were willing to sit down for an interview with us.
Yeah, that's freaking awesome, man. And you've done some other stuff too. I know you got into Sundance not once but twice, which is amazing in itself.
Actually, just once, but
Just once.
maybe your research came from the future. Maybe someday there'll be a second, I'm sure. But
I thought it was twice. Oh.
I've had some other things that have gone elsewhere, but yeah, Sundance was just once so
Mm-hmm.
far.
Well, hell, that's still something amazing because that's not really easy to get into. Easy to submit
Yeah,
to, but not to get
yeah,
into.
yeah. That was wild. That was back around the same time, actually. So right when I met Howard and started filming with Howard, that was the fall of 2016, and I had been working on a project with a friend, kind of off and on for the previous year. It was a friend of mine who had shot some incredible footage in Ethiopia of this man who every night goes to the outskirts of town in this city in eastern Ethiopia called Harar, and he feeds wild hyenas strips of camel meat, and he's been doing this for years, and is very close with the hyenas, and he pets them and feeds them the meat out of his mouth, and just they're these giant creatures that could rip him to shreds. So it's
Yeah.
pretty stunning footage. And so she had this footage, and she also had recorded a poem by a local poet in the local dialect about love and kind of desperate love. And so we made something kind of weird or different. We just, there wasn't really any contextual information about the man. And I mean, there's a bigger story to it, which is quite interesting, that there's a legend that there was a big famine many years ago, and the famine was so great that people were starving, and hyenas were starving as well, and they actually came into the city and started attacking and eating people. So a tradition started of leaving food out for the hyenas. Even if people were starving, you want to, whatever food you have, at least give it to the hyenas so they don't come eat you. And so this tradition was carried on, and so that's what this man was doing, essentially, kind of carrying on that tradition. So that information, though, you can find online, or there's like articles written about it. But we created something different that was really just kind of focusing on the emotion and the bond between this man and the hyenas. So it was the footage, and presented it in black and white, and with this poem, and with a really ethereal kind of ambient electronic soundtrack that a couple friends of mine came up with. And it was a big lesson in, we were very excited about it, and it definitely felt like one of the weirder things that I had made. I remember like showing it to my parents, and they were all freaked out. And I think I don't know. I've come to learn that if my parents like don't like something, that's actually maybe a good sign.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it taught me. I think that the material that Sundance and probably other top festivals are interested in are really, the boundary pushing, risk taking, really out of the ordinary type stuff.
Very cool. Very, very cool. Yeah, I love films. I love, because it's an escape for me. It's a good way to, for 2 hours, I don't have to think about something. I don't have to think about this bill's due, or this happened at work. I'm concentrating on that. And for me, a filmmaker is giving us all a gift when you do that, because it's hard to do, especially now. And I can escape.
Yeah.
And that's such a great gift. And I want to thank you for that, because that's beautiful.
Yeah, no, thank you for saying that. I think that's definitely the goal of a filmmaker. And it's, you don't always get there. You need the viewer to really trust you, and to be able to like lose themselves in the world that you're trying to put them in. And really, that's funny you say that too, because as I went along with the Howard Bloom film, it was, as you can imagine, it was quite a challenge to figure out, okay, what's the way into this story? There's so many facets to it, and what do I focus on, and what's the thread that's going to kind of keep it all together. And so I kind of went through many ideas on that front of just for my own sake of how to frame it, and how to approach what I was doing with, this footage that I'd gathered. And one way of looking at it that I think was helpful along the way is that, I had the fortune of taking these walks with Howard, and Howard, he takes a walk through Prospect Park in Brooklyn every day at 4 p.m. And because he's trying to maximize his efficiency every day, he oftentimes, that's when he does his meetings, and he invites people to take a walk with him, or he calls them on the phone while he's walking. And it's, as you experienced through doing an interview with him, it's quite a trip. And
yeah.
The conversation can just go from, quantum physics to, human evolution, cultural evolution, to space, and just all points in between. And so at the end of the day, the film, there's a lot in there, and there's a lot of ideas, and there's obviously, there's a lot to cover, and when you're trying to present somebody like Howard. But at the end of the day, I was just thinking, this film, it ended up being 67 minutes, and if I can just with this film, at least kind of replicate the experience of taking one of those walks with Howard and just getting in his mind for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of one measure of success for me.
Yeah, and I've not had the pleasure of getting to walk with him, but like I say, doing the interview, he lets you in. If he's going to talk to you, he's going to let you in, and it is such to walk around in his head for 30 minutes, you would come out such a changed person.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be like the biggest museum in the world with everything in it.
Oh yeah. He's as he said, he's trying to be the world's biggest data processing device. So he's just constantly just voraciously consuming knowledge and is able to actually retain it and connect it and spit it back out.
I just now thought of a nice nickname for Howard. I think next time I talk to him, I'm going to tell him that I want to start calling him Johnny Five. Yep.
I don't know if he watches, cultural movies like that.
Yeah.
But I'm sure if he understood the reference, he would greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, I think so, because I believe he could read a matchbook and 20 years later be able to tell you everything about it.
Yeah.
And analyze it for you. And that is awesome.
Yeah.
But
he's neat.
Yeah, coming up and starting doing these films and kind of getting your feet into the festivals and getting the privilege to deal with Charlie and not Charlie. You're Charlie. I'm dealing with Charlie. Dealing with Howard. And the people that you talk to in this film, what kind of advice would you give somebody that's just wanting to become a filmmaker or just starting out as a filmmaker?
Oh man. Well, first of all, if you're planning on making a lot of money, you should probably reassess your goals immediately.
Yeah.
But in terms of just, if somebody wants to make a documentary or a film, I mean, I think, well, not to bring everything back to Howard, but one of the themes in the film is really realizing your own unique, authentic passion, which is something that Howard used to preach to the rock stars he worked with, and something he did for himself and something he now kind of preaches to everyone. But I think that's like what really stuck with me from all of his ideas and theories. To me, that was really the connective tissue for I think the most special idea of his, which is that that's what really drives the universe and drives any great work. So as it pertains to filmmaking, it's like any art, you can't fake it. So if you want to make a documentary about X topic, you really it starts and ends with the passion and interest in that topic, and that really drives everything else. And and then on a practical level, just keep making stuff. That's the only way to get good. Again, like any art form, really, just be totally okay with the fact that like the first 10 to 20 to maybe 100 films or pieces or projects you make will probably be crap and probably of interest to just you and a handful of other people, but push through that and have a commitment to making something great and improving with each new project that you attempt, and just try and get a little bit better and challenge yourself and and just keep at it.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, I know when I started this show, I didn't quite know how everything worked. I thought, okay, I'll get a couple on the board, and I'll have sponsors then. And
Mhm.
it was about doing what I want to do, but it was also about I'm going to make money doing this. Everybody knows the Joe Rogan numbers. I
Right,
mean, by the
right.
way, if you know anybody with a spare $100 million that wants to pay me to just be on their network, give them the number.
Okay.
And but I've learned over time that I don't care if I make money off of this. My equipment's paid for. I've got one
Mhm.
sponsor, and he's the guy that bought my first set of equipment.
Mhm.
And I mentioned him at the beginning of every show because they believed in me from the beginning.
Mhm.
And I just want to have fun with this, and I want it to be a piece of me, not like we talked about earlier. I don't want to be the radio voice.
Mhm.
And I think that's working. And as
Yeah.
I grow with this, more people are listening, and it's funny because my analytics right now are really messed up. It's
Mhm.
showing that I've got 4 hits in the last 2 weeks, which I know is wrong because hell, I've listened more than 4 times. But it's the way it goes. Some people say you live and die by the numbers. I've learned to quit paying attention to them.
Yeah.
And today I found out, like I say, I'm on the Apple charts now, and I think it was 152, and that's cool. So I know my
Yeah.
analytics
Yeah.
are not
Amazing.
updating right, but it's about if I can get one person that wants to listen to this and I can help them escape for an hour,
Mhm.
then I've done good. If
Yeah.
you're
Yeah. Yeah.
if you're in
And
the
it,
car, oh, go ahead.
it is important too, though, to like, build on what I was saying. It's just the passion alone might run out at a certain point if you feel like, if you're not reaching
Yeah,
anyone. And I think at a certain point, it is important to know that, yeah, that people are connecting with what you're putting out there, and that definitely helps kind of fan the flames of the passion.
yeah, definitely. And it's neat because I've got a friend of mine who, I mean, everybody that knows me knows I do the show. I don't know how many of them actually listen because we don't talk about it a lot. But a friend of mine actually made me a nice wooden sign for my studio down here. It says "Smoked Meat." He does woodworking, and I found out he listens in the morning when he drinks his coffee. He turns on one of my shows, and that is so cool.
Yeah.
I was on Facebook in a group that I'm in, and somebody that has a hunting show out of Idaho, was asking, I need somebody that's a paramedic or a doctor to come on the show about first aid. So I sent him a message, and we started talking back and forth. And he's like, "Do you have a problem with hunting?" I said, "No, not a bit." And explained the deal with me and my smoked meats and all that stuff and hunting.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "I do a podcast called Smoked Meat." And he's like, "You're kidding." I'm like, "No," he said, "I listened to that. I started listening to an episode you did called Hunting for the Cure. And I listen all the time now." And I'm like, "Really?" And it's neat to hear things like that because, I know it's a worldwide medium, but you just don't think of some guy that you don't know in Idaho listening to you and
Yeah.
waiting for the next episode. That's really neat.
Well, yeah, man, and we live in this age now of just utter saturation of the media landscape,
Yeah.
and to be able to break through to be able to actually connect with that person that would actually get that benefit from listening to your product. It's almost like just a miracle at this point, but
Yeah.
it's great when it happens. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Charlie, I tell you, man, I've had a ball on here today with you. And
Yeah, likewise.
I want everybody to go on Amazon and get the Grand Unified Theory of Howard Bloom.
Yeah,
Uh,
and leave a 5-star review for me.
definitely. Definitely. And
Gotta
like
get
I say,
that pretty fast.
you're welcome here anytime. And anytime you need to promote something, call and say, "Hey, fat boy, I want to talk." And I will hit the button. You've seen how fast I can plug in and go.
For sure, Brad. It's been a pleasure,
But yeah.
and wish you continued success.
Thank you so much, and right back at you, man, because I see big things coming.
Thank you.
Yep.